Listen, if we want to go viral, one of you's going to have to hit the other one. Okay? I'm sorry to tell you, this is an
That
attention
just doesn't
economy.
happen in the Green Party. It's just, yeah.
I think nice is a word that just makes me go, meh. I think that's part of the problem with the party, is maybe we've just been too nice.
Our superpower, if you like, is the trust that we've got among a wide range of voters.
Since you come into government.
Come into government.
Sorry.
Bless you, Nish. I mean, yeah.
Let's do it.
Hi, this is Pod Save the UK. I'm Nish Kumar.
And I'm Coco Khan. We're in the studio again, Nish.
Back in real life.
This is the first time I've seen you this week, which is not what I expected, because I watched for you when I was watching the cricket. I knew you were in the audience.
I was at the cricket for 2 days at the time of my life.
I thought I was going to see this sort of Hugh Grant at Wimbledon moment. Like it would like cut to you and you'd be doing something like slightly embarrassing. I was really hoping for it.
Hugh Grant fully asleep at Wimbledon. No.
I knew you wouldn't be asleep, and maybe you'd be doing some sort of viral moment.
I was wide awake and I did not go viral. And we can say nothing more. That's a huge roaring success for attending live sporting events.
Exactly.
And let's say it, G-list UK celebrity.
Oh.
Hugh Grant's A-list, man. You can't be falling asleep at a sporting event if you're as famous as Hugh Grant.
You've got to respect that he just thought, it's not for me, is it? It's a very hot day. I've had a lot of Pims. Yeah, it really is the People's Prince.
Anyway, away from the England-India test match, we've got another head-to-head this week on the show. The Greens are choosing a new leader, and in the studio for a friendly debate are leadership hopefuls Ellie Chowns and Zack Polanski.
And clashes between the unions and the government on my favourite subject, the bins. Workers in Birmingham have been on strike for months now, and an upcoming mega picket event that aligns with the upcoming resident doctor strikes has the unions questioning their long-held relationship with Labour. But first up, this week, on Monday, the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband made a landmark speech in the House of Commons in what he has described as an exercise in radical truth-telling on the state of the climate crisis and the nature decline. He spoke about climate change.
Over the last 50 years, the number of days above 28 degrees centigrade have doubled and above 30 degrees have trebled. This spring was the UK's warmest on record, beating the record broken last year.
And Miliband also spoke about the state of our natural world.
The abundance of species in England has fallen by an estimated third since 1970. And Britain has become one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world.
And Miliband also hinted toward the need to renew bipartisanship on climate policy.
The safety of our citizens, our natural world, the country we pass on, is not a Labour cause or a Conservative cause or that of any other party. It is a British cause. It is a cause of us all.
The speech is due to be the first of an annual series of speeches addressing the state of the climate and nature emergency.
So Miliband also made mention of the economic risks of inaction. So he cited the difficulties farmers faced over the wet and hot summer last year, predicting further issues to come. But he also made note of the economic benefits of environmental action. So lower bills, new jobs in manufacturing, all part of the green revolution.
Did you feel positive about this in terms of setting out the government's stall on climate leadership?
Yeah, I did, because I think when we look at the rollback of commitment to net zero that we've seen in other countries, in the US, and even, a sense of it coming from the Conservatives, certainly coming from Reform, you do wonder, with this particular government, will they have the spine to show their convictions on this and say this is really important? So it's been great to hear it.
Yeah, I think it's essential that we turn back the clock to before the climate became a sort of wedge issue, because actually, even going back 10, 15 years ago, the Conservative Party was not against climate science. Yeah. And as part of that, in his speech, Miliband paid tribute to a number of ministers from across party lines, including Lib Dem backbencher Rod Savage, who introduced the Climate and Nature Bill earlier this year. When hinting towards the breakdown in climate consensus, he also made explicit mention of the positive contributions of previous Tory MPs Cameron, May and Johnson. However, all of this didn't stop the current brand of Tory MPs from doing what they do best, being short-sighted morons. Here's Tory Minister Andrew Bowie.
Mr. Speaker, it is indeed time for a policy of radical honesty. Global warming is a global challenge, and his plans will have a negligible or even negative impact on global emissions, I'm afraid, driven sadly by ideology, not by practicalities of facing this challenge whilst growing the economy. We are telling the difficult truths. They are running from reality.
First of all, let me congratulate him. Because I don't think I've ever seen someone pack that little charisma into 20 seconds. Like, that was astonishing. We could have played you a whole lot more of that response, but we didn't want you to either combust into a ball of flame in sheer rage or simply collapse and expire due to a lack of interest in the person speaking. Andrew Bowie's claims that Labour are running from reality feels a bit rich, given it was him that was speaking at all, because he's a minister and the shadow energy and net zero secretary, Claire Coutinho, sent him down. She didn't even come down herself to speak on what is clearly going to be one of the biggest moments for the environment in Parliament this year. And of course, Ed Miliband did actually have his comeback ready on exactly this subject.
I can't put it better than Theresa May, and this is what she said. Theresa May, she was a former Conservative Prime Minister just 5 years ago. Those of us who advocate accelerating our progress towards net zero emissions are labelled fanatics and zealots. Ironically, the name-calling often emanates from ideologues at the political extremes or from populists who offer only easy answers to complex questions. I couldn't put it better myself.
And then we have to contrast that, of course, the callback to Theresa May with the current leader, Kemi Badenoch. Her position has offered no alternative to the 2050 net zero target. It's failed to cite any evidence in support of her assertion that meeting it would be impossible without bankrupting the country.
We spoke about this on the show a few weeks ago, but Reform's deputy leader, Richard Tice, has taken to throwing around the phrase net stupid zero, as if that's a sort of game-changing policy idea. It's very important that every single party, apart from the shattered husk of the Conservative Party and the oil company financed shit stirrers from Reform, it's very, very important that the rest of the political consensus hardens its unity on this issue. We are facing a crisis for the entire species. There is no time at which I ever think Richard Tice's opinion is useful or valuable, but it's definitely absolutely useless here. And I think actually, Miliband trying to build those bridges is probably really, really important. And certainly using some words spoken by a former Conservative Prime Minister to throw back in the faces of the current incumbents is really worthwhile. I really do think that that's worthwhile. On to the Labour Party this week. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has been booted out of Unite the Union.
Yes, so she's officially suspended. The union voted overwhelmingly at their conference to give her the chop.
And the reason for all of this is Coco Khan's favourite subject, bins.
Yes, of course. Bins are very serious. People don't take them seriously enough. They speak to the heart of our quality of lives on a local level. So, let's all be interested in it. So if you don't know, a bin strike has been happening in Birmingham since March, where the council has been trying to cut pay and restructure bin workers' jobs. Some of them are looking at an $8,000 pay cut.
It's bad stuff. So the workers went on strike. Unite backed them. And at least according to Unite, who swooped in on the side of the council? It was Angela Rayner. Now, in a Radio 4 interview this week, Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite, claimed that there was a ballpark deal agreed with the Managing Director of Birmingham City Council. Rayner was to go away, firm it up, and basically just broker a solution. But when she came back, she told them that the government commissioners had blocked it, at which point Unite, I think, reasonably said, but these commissioners report to you.
So that's Unite's side of the story, but The Guardian reports that a Labour Party source told them that Angela's not interested in silly stunts. That's the quote, silly stunts. I'll go on with this quote. She's interested in changing workers' lives. Unite rejected a deal in Birmingham and their demands would have undermined equal pay, discriminating against female workers.
There's also been a suggestion that Rayner wasn't even pushed out. She actually claims to have quit Unite. Labour sources told Radio 4 that she stopped paying her subs in April. Unite have said she was definitely still a member in March and she was a member when she asked us for $10,000 for the election. So this is Sharon Graham, Unite's General Secretary, sounding absolutely furious about the whole affair on Radio 4's Today programme.
Angela Rayner refuses to get involved and she is directly aiding and abetting the fire and rehire of these bin workers. It is totally and utterly abhorrent.
Fuming. She's furious. So she's so angry that Unite are now threatening to cut their annual payment to the Labour Party. Now, that is not an insubstantial sum of money, given that it's £1.45 million. And they are talking about reviewing their entire relationship with the party, which is, I imagine, something that would be of serious concern.
The question is, of course, what's next? Well, we know that the bins are piling up. Labour's alienated their biggest backers. And then there's this whole thing about Rayner having quit United ages ago, but still getting suspended. I don't really know about that element of this disagreement. I don't really get it. On the one hand, I understand why United did it. It's symbolic. Could you say it's also performative? But if Unite do this, my other trade unions follow suit. I think it's quite a big deal.
Whether we're talking about this or whether we're talking about the formation of a new left party, it is just week on week a discussion about the fragmentation of progressive politics into smaller and smaller factions. If the unions walk away from Labour, then does that not further fragment the progressive vote in this country? Can the Labour Party afford to lose £1.45 million in terms of its annual donation? Does Angela Rayner think that maybe by picking a fight with the trade unions, it bolsters her credentials potentially as the next Prime Minister? Labour leaders love, traditionally with a couple of exceptions in the last sort of 2 decades, enjoy picking fights with the unions because they think that it makes them look like they're not in the pocket of anybody to the British electorate. But my concern with all of this is it's just sort of further fragmenting any kind of progressive voice in this country. If it sounds like I'm having a go at the unions, I'm having a go at everybody. As always, I'm mad with everybody. I don't know that it's productive for Unite to withdraw their funding from the Labour Party. There are questions to be asked about the electoral viability of smaller progressive parties, but also I really, really don't think it's advisable for the Labour leadership to consistently spend all of its time and political energy attacking its natural allies.
For podcast listeners, Nish has spent most of the last 5 minutes with his head in his hands. He is genuinely, truly exasperated.
So this strike has already led to a mega picket in May, which saw hundreds of people shut down a rubbish depot. And there's another one planned for later this month. On top of that, there is another huge strike coming on the same day as this second mega picket. So resident doctors, which is the name that we now give to what we used to call junior doctors, announced new strike action over 5 days from the 25th of July. In their bid to restore pay equity in real terms with their equivalent 2008 salaries, which still remains about 25% below their salary in 2008 in real terms. Now, the concern for the doctors is that at this juncture, they seem to be losing support with the public.
Yeah, so an Ipsos poll shows that public support for the upcoming 5-day strike by resident doctors, formerly known as junior doctors, has dropped sharply with only 26% of people in favour. So that's a steep fall from 52% this time last year. YouGov polling shows a similar decline. Their numbers say 36% of people support the strike, while 49% oppose it.
Wes Streeting, the health secretary, has warned resident doctors that strike action would be a gift to Farage. He told a meeting of Labour MPs on Monday that ministers were in the fight for the survival of the NHS, and if Labour failed, Farage would argue for it to be replaced by an insurance-style system. And I don't think those concerns about Farage are off base at all. Farage has in the past repeatedly advocated for an insurance-style system. But I also think there's a theme emerging with the Labour Party where it already feels, just over a year in, that they're in a kind of defensive mode, and the only thing that they're offering to the public is saying, if you don't support us, reform win. If you don't support us, reform win. And again, you've got to give people something to vote for. The Democrats essentially ran on a platform of, if you don't vote for us, you'll get Trump. And not on their legislative achievements. And that is a problem, I think.
It's all roads lead back to this same problem of Labour being scared to use the words wealth tax to implement taxing assets. We don't have enough money. So, in Rayner's argument, one of the reasons she doesn't want to support the bin workers' deals is because it would underpay equal pay. For anyone who hasn't been following that, traditionally, unionised workers in male-dominated professions such as rescues have done better at getting pay from councils than professions dominated by women such as care. And that has resulted more recently in court cases where people saying, well, these are of equal importance and they should have matching similar bands. The fact it hasn't is discrimination, is gender discrimination. And council have had to pay a load of money out for that. So she's essentially saying if we give the bin workers, who are predominantly men, a bit more money, then we're kind of undercutting equal pay. Obviously, the answer is we'll pay the female care workers more as well. That's obviously but they can't do that because they don't have the money. Why don't you have the money? All these problems. They're unpicking all of Labour's values. They're unpicking everything that the party stands for because they're hemmed in by this thing. So just do away with it. Do you know what I mean? And all roads keep leading back to this problem. When will you tax assets? When will you tax the rich? That's all they have to do.
The solutions Labour is reaching for are solutions that I think would worry its traditional support base. We're recording on Wednesday the 16th, and yesterday Rachel Reeves made a big announcement saying that they would be looking to relax some of the regulations around the financial sector, which were brought in after the 2008 financial crisis, a crisis that was the result of the financial sector exploiting the relaxed legislation around it. So again, part of this is Rachel Reeves feeling pressure to increase tax revenues. So I think they're hoping that unleashing the city will drive growth. But the concern here is that this is the start of a process that unpicks the protections that were put in place after 2008. So there's a lot to be concerned about. I've been rubbing my head pretty consistently for the last 10 minutes of this show. Let's talk about the King and Donald Trump. That's how depressed I am. That I am willfully engaging in a conversation about the royal family and Donald Trump.
For a little bit of light reprieve.
For a little bit of light relief.
So the King did something that we have to give credit to. He's diplomatically flipped the bird to Donald Trump. Tell us more, Nish.
So this week it was announced that Trump's long-awaited and unprecedented second state visit to the UK has been scheduled for Parliament's upcoming recess for party conferences in September. What does that mean? It means no address to Parliament for Donald Trump.
So in a phone call to the BBC, Trump said in response, "Let them go and have a good time." That was, sorry.
The fuck was that?
That was my Trump impression.
It sounded like Tom Waits.
Just smoking a lot of cigarettes.
Yeah.
He basically says, he doesn't want them to come back from recess.
It also means that it's the second time that Trump has been snubbed for an address to Parliament, unlike his first-term predecessor, Barack Obama. And of course, the usual suspects are saying that Parliament should be recalled for the visit. Both Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman have waded in, with Farage saying it's shoddy and cowardly that the government is allowing the recess to go ahead. The protests for Trump for his first state visit were absolutely enormous. And I suspect the second lot of protests will be even bigger. And I think probably the government has decided that they don't want him addressing Parliament because of the sort of chaos that would engulf the kind of immediate areas around Westminster on that day. I mean, when you look at what's happening in America, the idea of him being offered a second state visit, it's unbelievable. I just feel like I spent my whole life being taught about the Second World War and how when you see this kind of evil rearing its head, you have to push back against it, this, that, and the other. And I feel like I learned a lot of those lessons and internalized them. And now I'm 39 years old and everyone's saying, sometimes it is necessary to do trade deals with the Nazis. And you go, well, why did you teach me all that fucking shit about the Second World War? Why did you spend my entire childhood telling me that these movements were bad if at the first sign of them, you all just collapsed on the floor to bow your head to it?
An upshot of this, and I can't believe I'm even using that language, is that, Farage and Braverman essentially saying, no, we should roll out the red carpet for Trump. That is going to alienate them with the public. The public don't like Trump.
Yeah, that's right. Donald Trump's approval with the British public is still not great.
Exactly.
Anyway, the battle to lead the Green Party is very much on. And after the break, two of the leadership candidates, Zack Polanski and Ellie Chowns, will be telling us why they're the right person for the job.
This podcast is brought to you by Wise.
Wise is the smart way to manage your money internationally.
Sending or spending money abroad, major banks may be taking a cut. But with Wise, you'll always get the real mid-market exchange rate so you can use money around the globe with minimum fees and maximum ease.
Setting up your Wise account is easy and you'll have access to over 40 countries in just a few seconds. From buying overseas properties to tapping your card on the metro, get the real deal for your money all around the globe. And with 24/7 live support and real-time transaction tracking, you know that your money is secure. Just as we were about to start talking about Wise, our producer revealed that he used Wise when he moved over here from Australia. And he said the service was incredibly easy. And the process of getting money from one country to another is incredibly complicated. And a tool like Wise actually really, really helps simplify that entire process.
And it is crazy with the amount of bank fees. I did a girls' holiday some while ago, and we went to Ibiza, obviously, and you're splitting all the bills live when you're there, and then like a few weeks later, all the individual transactions comes in with a little bit of fees. I find myself messaging being like, "Sorry, girls, actually, can you just send me another 15 quid?" But anyway, with Wise, that never happens. You never have to be embarrassed about your need for £15.
12 million customers, including our producer, managing their international money with Wise. Can't be wrong. Download the Wise app today or visit wise.com. Terms and conditions apply.
The Green Party has never been so successful. They made major gains at last year's general election, winning a record 4 new MPs. Now they are selecting a new leader, and the candidates have very different ideas of how to continue to build the Green movement. It's a contest between Ellie Chowns, who replaces outgoing co-leader and former guest on this show, Carla Denyer, to run on a joint ticket alongside Adrian Ramsay, and the party's current deputy leader, Zack Polanski.
Ellie and her co-leader Adrian say that the party needs to be run by MPs with the ability to speak across political divides, while Zack feels a more radical message will strengthen the Greens' appeal, calling for the party to become a mass membership eco-populism movement. To tell us more about these competing visions of the party and answer some of your questions too, Ellie and Zack join us now. Welcome to Pod Save the UK, both.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for having us.
I do confess, when I learned that you were both going to be here, the first thing I texted the producer was just the words fight, 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 fight. But actually, I've seen you embrace
And then we hugged when we came in.
It's
all gone to pot.
This is the politics that we want,
The
This
whole
is what we want
framing's
to see.
collapsed. Sorry, Coco.
Listen, if we want to go viral, one of you is going to have to hit the other one. Okay? I'm sorry to tell you, this is an
That
attention
just doesn't
economy.
happen in the Green Party. It's just,
Not quite the vibe. You have to go to reform for that.
So, Ellie, you were one of the 4 Green MPs elected last year. You won North Herefordshire from the Tories with a majority of almost 6,000. And Zack, you were elected as a member of the London Assembly in 2021 and a deputy leader of the Greens in 2022. But you guys have lots in common, aside from obviously being within the Green Party. Both of you were arrested in 2019 for your protests with XR. Did you know each other?
At
Yes.
that point, yeah, we must
Not
have done.
well, but-
I was a member of the European Parliament at that point. I wasn't actually protesting with XR. I happened to be in London for a meeting of MEPs. All of the European Green MEPs were in London, and it was the time of the XR protests. And we heard that Trafalgar Square was being cleared, and I was literally at this meeting in a hotel a stone's throw away. So I went to the square, and it was the Monday night, I think, and asked the police, "What are you doing? Or what's your justification for clearing the square?" I was literally just standing in the square asking their justification, and I was arrested for standing in the square asking them to justify their extreme policing. And so I was arrested and put in a police station overnight, and then was part of a court case challenging that, which found that obviously their arrest of me and others was unlawful.
Was your arrest lawful, Zack?
Mine was completely opposite, actually. I was asking for it.
Okay.
I was with Extinction Rebellion. I was one of the first people arrested with Extinction Rebellion, which I carry as a badge of pride, actually, because the planet is on fire. And a group of people in this country stood in a road at Waterloo and said, politicians have to do something about this. I wasn't an elected politician at the time. I later went on and got elected the next year or 2 years later. Then chaired the Environment Committee, where I was in a place to make the difference. But I think nonviolent direct action has a huge place in our society. And actually, I think we should always stand with the right to protest, which I know we both definitely have in common.
Absolutely. That wasn't my first arrest, actually.
But I feel this weird sense of competition where I want to be like, yeah, well, I got
we can
arrested.
arrange it.
I mean, my first arrest was...
There are enough things to be arrested about right now. We can definitely-
I wish mine was a good one. It was just disorderliness, just disorderly behaviour. Wasn't me.
Arrested for being
It wasn't me.
disorderly.
It wasn't me. I was not involved. I just happened to be there.
A lot of your childhood anecdotes sound like street songs. I did stand up at the Extinction Rebellion sit-in 2019 in a move a friend of mine described as being painfully on brand. But let's kick things off properly and ask you both to outline your pitch for where you want to take the Green Party and why you're the right person, or in your case, Ellie, were part of the right team of 2 people to do it. And let's start with Ellie, just because you're sat closer to me.
Thanks, Nish. I'm hugely ambitious for the Green Party. I want us to win power. I want us to win more support in the country. We've already got huge support, actually, about around 10%. And the reason we've only got 4 MPs so far is because we've got this hugely inequitable electoral system. So that needs to change. But I want us to get more people elected. And we know how to do that as the Green Party. We have learned those lessons kind of really hard and fast over the last few years, especially. We know that we need to target our efforts. We know that we need to reach out and speak to a really wide range of the population, because of course in first past the post you've got to win a huge chunk of votes. I mean, Adrian and I both won mid-40s% of the electorate in our campaigns, whereas in proportional elections, like the one that Zack was elected in and the one I was elected in as an MEP, it's about 11%, something like that. So we know that in order to get more people elected, we have to reach out really, really widely. We have to build on the huge success that we've had, both at local level with getting huge numbers of councillors elected and, of course, showing how we can break through in general elections too. So that's basically the pitch. Reach out as widely as possible, listen to people, connect what we want to say as Greens to the concerns that really affect people, because there are so much that needs to change. We're going in the wrong direction. The society is becoming increasingly unequal, the climate and nature crisis, the complete refusal of Labour to even talk about wealth taxation, the refusal to recognise our complicity in genocide. There are so many things that we want to be speaking out about, and we are in Parliament day in, day out. So we need to use that parliamentary platform to do that speaking out and that reaching out, and builds on the lessons we've learned around how to win more seats.
And Zack, you've been described as an eco-populist. That doesn't sound like that would have broad appeal. What do you think? Which direction do you want to go in?
Well, I'm recognising that when people need to heat their homes or put food on the table, the climate crisis isn't the first place that they're worried about. So what I'm talking about by eco-populism is saying that the Green Party needs to talk about lowering people's bills, defending our National Health Service and funding our public service. Now, I love Pod Save the UK. I love you guys, so that's a great start. But what I can't stand, and it happens all the time, is when you guys talk about us, it's always positive and supportive, thank you. But it's always a bit like that cousin that you're kind of supportive of, but they're a bit wet, or they're not quite you're not quite in with them. And if you guys can't even full-throated go, the Green Party is the party that we support, we need this party in government, then the Green Party aren't being bold enough. I want to see a party that recognises inequality is deeper than it's ever been before. Poor people are poorer than they've ever been before. We've got a Labour government cutting disability benefits, who are not just complicit in the genocide in Gaza, but active participants. They're selling arms to Israel and sharing intelligence. So what I want to see the Green Party doing is, yes, for work on the ground. We're doing that really well. The MPs are doing brilliant work in Parliament, and I really support that. But what we're really missing is that national cut-through for every single person in this country to know that the Green Party is a party, yes, that stands for the environment, but is there on social issues, racial issues, economic issues. We're there front and centre, taking the fight to reform, and that's the party I want to lead.
So let's try and draw a distinction here, because it sounds like the substance of what you're both saying is covering some quite similar ground. So, Ellie, can you articulate what you mean by reach out when you use that specific phrase? What does that look like for the Green Party?
So I suppose, Zack's used this phrase, eco-populism. And I suppose my pitch is that we know how to make green views popular. We've shown how to do that. And we do that by running campaigns that reach out, that convince a wide range of people to vote Green. Politics has been blown wide open, and it's long overdue, actually, because for too long we've had this really binary view of kind of old versus young, rural versus urban, Labour versus Conservative, left versus right. Actually, the population's much more diverse than that. And if you look at, More in Common did some brilliant research a few years ago that kind of has sort of identified these 7 segments of the UK population. And we know that green ideas are so attractive to so many. In fact, action on climate change is the one thing that unites people most across all those different population groups. So what we've got to make sure is that we don't paint ourselves into a corner of being perceived as only relevant to, only speaking to a small proportion of the population, the sort of people who are already progressive activists. Absolutely, we want all of them to support the Green Party. But we need to recognise that there's a whole bunch of other people out there who've got other concerns. I've been an activist my entire life, 30 years. I spent my whole life working for social and environmental justice. I got involved in politics 10 years ago, literally, because basically Nigel Farage drove me to it. I just couldn't bear the way he was leading UK politics. I wanted to see more people with my values standing up there. And my whole experience has been that by being out and proud about what you believe in, you bring people over, you make those connections with people, but you've got to be careful not to alienate them at the same time.
Zack, do you worry then that eco-populism is an alienating term that only speaks to, to be frank, people like the hosts and listenership of this podcast. Is that something that you're concerned about?
Well, the people it's going to alienate are the 1%. When I talk about populism, I'm talking about the 99%, talking about working class people. I'm talking about people who have precarious livings, who want to, get ill for one day and you could lose your job and you could lose your rent. But the 1% right now, those corporations, they're destroying our environment, they're destroying our communities, and they're destroying our democracy. And so what I want to do is grow our movement. And I can bring you the receipts. So the president of the Bakers Union, he's endorsed me, the first time that someone from a trade union has endorsed someone outside the Labour Party in decades. Grace Blakely, an economist, she's endorsed me and joined the party to vote for me. John McDonnell, no, he's not joined the party, but James Medway, who used to advise John McDonnell, has joined the party to vote for me. Michaela Loach, amazing climate activist. Now, the reason why I'm reading off these names is because they're people from a wide variety of politics. And what I want to do is make sure that everyone knows they've got a home in the Green Party. The same polling that Ellie was talking about was just updated this week, and it shows that 22% of what's called progressive activists will vote for the Green Party, but 6 in 10 are thinking about voting for the Green Party. That's another 20% of people who could vote for us if we were bolder about our views. But when you speak to these people, they sometimes go, yeah, I support you, but again, it comes back to, you're a bit wet, or you're a bit middle class, or you're not really speaking in ways that I understand. What I really want to do is make sure that our communication is accessible. So of course, I'm not going to run around saying eco-populism. That is a way of provoking the conversation we're having right now, which is ultimately saying we've got to take this fight to the elites.
I suppose the thing is that the section of the population Zack's talking about there, it's still only about 1/7 of the population. And in order to win elections, we have to appeal to the majority of the population.
And I think the majority of the population want to see bills reduced. They want to see the protection of the NHS. They want to see action on climate. That's not just a progressive group. So it's about making sure we're speaking to everyone. And I've been doing that. I've been touring the country for the last year. I've been doing lots of rallies with Jeremy Corbyn and various people. And we've been going into communities who have traditionally been left behind by politics. And when I'm out there and knocking on doors, speaking to people who have never voted before, and this is the scale of the risk. If we don't get to them, reform will. And, people going, I might vote Reform or Green sounds counterintuitive. Like people wouldn't do that. We hear it all the time because people are sick of the old two parties. And so they should. For decades, they have let them down. They've lied to them. Public services are broken and everything is a bit shit. So we need an alternative, and we need to make the case that Reform are not the alternative. They are millionaires pretending to serve the working class, but they're actually serving billionaires. The Green Party are the people who will actually change people's lives for the better.
Pod Save the UK is brought to you by Shopify.
Whatever you dreamed of when you were little, if you got there or you didn't, if you have your own business, you need a website, you need a payment system, you definitely need a logo, and you need a way to advertise to new customers. It can all be overwhelming and confusing, but that's where today's sponsor, Shopify, comes in.
Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands that are just getting started.
If you're asking yourself, what if I can't design a website? Well, Shopify's got you from the get-go with beautiful, ready-to-go templates to match your brand style.
If you need a hand, you can get help with everyday tasks like enhancing product images, writing product descriptions, or generating discount codes with Shopify's AI tools specifically created for commerce.
And if people haven't heard about your brand, well, Shopify helps you find your customers with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns.
And if you get stuck, Shopify's always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support.
Turn those dreams into and give them the best shot at success with Shopify.
Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/podsavetheuk.
Go to shopify.co.uk/podsavetheuk.
Shopify.co.uk/podsavetheuk. I want to ask you about the specific models of the way that you're working at the moment. Ellie, the Greens have been criticised for maybe being unclear about some of what you stand for since you've come into government, because there's with the co-leadership model.
Come into government.
Sorry.
Bless you, Nish.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm with you on the ambition.
Since you guys have come into Parliament with the co-leadership model, there's been some criticism that maybe with two leaders, you struggle to get message cut through and it maybe dissipates the strength of your message. Are you still convinced of the need for a co-leadership model, and what benefits do you think that brings?
I think there are real benefits to a co-leadership model. First of all, it models the cooperative approach that we take to politics. And, we just stand in total contrast to reform. We don't stand for that big man model of politics. We don't stand for that loud hailer model of politics. We don't stand for that kind of, choose your own 3-word slogan model of politics. So, we can't outshout reform. And I don't think we can attract people, a wide range of people to vote for us by trying to outshout reform. We have to outshine them. And we do that by remaining kind of rooted in our own authentic values. That's the thing that drove me into politics in the first place, was that basically Caroline Lucas was providing the complete opposite example to what Farage was doing. I wanted there to be more people like Caroline Lucas, and I'm dead chuffed that she's endorsing me and Adrian. But, the co-leadership model shows that we really value female leadership because we insist that there's a woman as part of that. It also shows that we focus on cooperation and working together. And there's some really practical benefits as well. You can have 2 people, so you can literally be in 2 places at the same time. You can share the load. You can do different media engagements and so forth. So I think, and it's a model that's been used by Greens in other places around the world. Germany, for example, very successfully. Under Carla and Adrian, the last 4 years, we've had our most successful period ever as a party. It's been fantastic. We really have learned how to win. And that's a model that I want to continue building on and strengthening in a transformational way.
Zack, let's bring you in on this, because obviously you're talking about taking the Green Party and making it more loud, trying to reach out to those disillusioned Labour voters, but also disillusioned Conservative voters. Isn't there an argument to say, well, the Green Party already does that? It's not really a transformation. Well, it's already this party anyway.
I don't think it is about volume, but I do think at the moment we're not outshining Reform. Reform are number 1 in the polls. Farage is all over TV constantly. Now, admittedly, they have a 24/7 propaganda machine in GB News. They also have very deep pockets, so they can fund media. But we can complain about that, which I'm certainly happy to do. I can bitch and moan about it all day. But we've got to do something about it. And so what I've been doing about it is raising our social media platform. That's not just me, but that's all the people in communities across the country. People from diverse communities and working class communities who are already in the Green Party. It's just that the media don't know about it because we haven't taken the time that we need to train and invest people so their voices and their platforms are being heard. And I think that is how we outshine people. I also think that it's not about loud hailer politics. I agree with that. I think it's about being effective and being smart about what we say. I wouldn't dismiss 3-word slogans. I think they've been pretty effective in this country. Get Brexit Done was pretty catastrophic for the country, but it was undeniably something that pushed through. And I don't know if we're going to have an endorsement off here, but Caroline Lucas's campaign manager, has just endorsed me this morning. That's alongside nearly every single former winning campaign manager of the Green Party has said that you want Zack in the room when you're planning electoral strategy.
Hang on, I just need to challenge on that, because many of the former campaign managers are still staff and they can't do endorsements. So I think, we need to be kind of
the vast majority of former
really
campaign managers who can speak, who aren't staff members now, I think 95% of them are endorsing me. I can just think of one who isn't.
It's important to be accurate.
So let's go on to some listener questions. So one listener with the Instagram handle Firmenstein, great name. They're a Green Party member. They asked, how do you maintain the coalition of voters, lots of whom don't see us as a left-wing party, whilst being louder about our socialist policies? Can we maintain the nice, sensible reputation while making a lot more noise? Ellie, I'll start with you.
The point that Firmenstein is making about being able to reach out and speak to and appeal to a really wide range of people is something I completely agree with, and it's something I've totally experienced in my own campaigning. And so I know that we've got to be able to speak to a lot of different people. We've got to be able to connect with where they are. And our green identity is really core to that. Our focus on building a better future for our kids and the next generation is something that people really understand viscerally about us. Tackling inequality is also at the centre of our politics and our policies. And that's, it's completely integrated. We need to be able to... Sorry.
I want to challenge you just a little bit here, but Firmenstein's assertion, which I have to say I have seen and heard and maybe even agree, is that there is a perception that the Green Party is not left-wing. Is the Green Party left-wing?
Absolutely.
And would be shouting about that, being proud of that, be something that we would see? in your leadership?
I am really proud that we're a left-wing party. I think if you look at what I talk about in Parliament, in my constituency, if you look at what the Green Party does as a whole, we're clearly a left-wing party. And we are able to appeal to people who previously have been really put off by Keir Starmer or Jeremy Corbyn or whatever. And that's a real strength that we've got as the Green Party, because people know that we are really, really rooted in our values. People vote for us, even if they don't agree with absolutely everything that's in our manifesto. And of course, that's normal in politics, right? You've never find anybody that you agree with completely 100%, but people see in us something that they trust. And trust is a really missing thing in politics as a whole. At the minute, we see, Farage's kind of votes go up and down. And frankly, they've gone up and down hugely over the last 10 years, depending on what else is going on. We have consistently grown and grown and grown because we've built that trust. And so I think we do need to be better at cutting through nationally. We've definitely upped our game in the last year. It's absolutely helped having 4 MPs, but we've also got to recognise that our superpower, if you like, is the trust that we've got among a wide range of voters. And that is rooted in their recognition that we stand for a greener and a fairer country, and that they want to support people that they can believe in.
Zack, let me bring you in. I mean, that notion, lots of people don't see the Green Party as a left-wing party. Do you agree with that?
I think lots of people don't see it as a left-wing party, which is why we need to talk about socialism more often. And we need to talk about the fact that we want to redistribute wealth from the very wealthy to help fund our public services and reduce inequality. Now, I've been having lots of chats with Gary Stevenson, so if some of this sounds familiar, that's partly why. Inequality is at the heart of everything, and that's whether you live in a town, a city, or the countryside. Now, look, I live in Hackney. I'm a London Assembly member. I'm not going to lie, I'm much more comfortable in the city than I am putting a pair of wellies on. However, during the election, a Guardian journalist came round with me for a few hours, and they wrote an article about how surprised they were that I was able to connect with dairy farmers. And that's because if you live in a city, you're being screwed by unscrupulous landlords, or you could be being screwed by unscrupulous landlords. You need rent controls. But if you're a farmer, you're being screwed over by supermarkets, or you might even be a tenant farmer, which means you're having to pay too much to your landlord. It's the same system that's screwing people over. So we do need to tackle inequality. And I think that's why wherever you live, our Green Party message is universal, which again is about tackling elites and making sure we're lifting everyone up.
But on Firmenstein's questions, can you maintain the nice, sensible reputation whilst being proudly socialist?
Well, I reject some of the nice, sensible reputation thing, to be honest. I think we should be kind. I'm always there to be kind. I think nice is a word that just makes me go, meh. I think that's part of the problem with the party, is maybe we've just been too nice. I'm not suggesting we're nasty for a second, but I am suggesting we pick fights. Just 2 nights ago, I was on the radio with Andrea Jenkins. She's the Reform Mayor of Lincolnshire. We had a proper Barney on the radio, and I think people loved it. Ultimately, though, the things she was saying were dangerous. She was basically climate denying. We're really at that point now with Reform. And I really called her out on that. The fact that Reform have taken £2.3 million in donations from fossil fuel companies. George Carlin had that old quote that politicians like NASCAR drivers should have to wear who sponsors them on their shirts. And I think with Reform, every time we're on TV and radio with them, and I say you need to know who's paying them to say these things.
The Green Party's historically stood up for trans rights and women's rights, but The Guardian's reported recently that the party was split over its response to the recent Supreme Court ruling that biological sex defines legal gender. Now, responding to this, one of our listeners, Cameron, asked, how would you deal with the gender critics in the party, some of whom have taken us to court, costing us thousands?
It's really sad that conflict over sex and gender has resulted in court cases, and clearly we need to look at some of our internal processes, disciplinary processes
the Green Party had to pay £90,000 to Shara Ali over a case of what he described as his gender critical views being.
So we need to make sure that the party is not making decisions that leave us open to legal challenge and to having to pay those costs. The party's got a hugely proud record of standing up for trans rights, of affirming the reality and the validity of trans identities, and of campaigning for true inclusion. And I'm really proud of that. I really support that. We have to recognise the Supreme Court ruling, and the party again has been really clear that while we, at the same time as recognising that, there are implications. And I've, immediately had trans constituents coming to see me in my constituency surgeries saying, look, I've lived as a trans woman for years, and now I'm supposedly not able to use the toilets I've always gone into. The EHRC's interim guidance straight afterwards was, I think, actively unhelpful. I think we do need to be able to talk about these sensitive and sometimes contentious issues. We need to make sure also that we're a party where we can have open and honest and compassionate conversations about these issues too, recognising that what are sometimes called gender-critical views are protected by law. We need to be able to have those conversations. And so, my whole politics is about trying to find areas of common ground. We do need to pick fights. Well, pick fights is not language that I would personally choose, actually. We need to be really, really strong in opposing things that are wrong. But at the same time, we also need to be able to have conversations about complex and contentious issues. And we need to be able to at least sit down with people that we disagree with to understand why they're at the position they're at, and whether we can find any way of finding that common ground.
Zack, how would you deal with the gender critics in the party?
Yeah, just to come off the back of that, I'll always pick fights. I'll pick fights with people who are demonising disabled people, who are demonising migrants, who are committing genocide. I think it's important that we do pick fights. I'm not talking about just doing it or courting controversy for the sake of it, but being in the ring rather than the sidelines and going, actually, to be kind and to be compassionate, you can fight and you can do that. I'm obviously not talking about violent fighting. I'm not talking about physically. So that's just a choice of words. On the trans rights are human rights, and that's unconditional for me. Yes, we can have kind and we should have compassionate conversations. Ultimately, though, there is a line for me, and the line is to recognise that the Supreme Court ruling was a mess. Now, of course, we need to respect it because it's the Supreme Court, but to have Keir Starmer saying that's what the Supreme Court says, so that's my understanding, is a complete nonsense. Ultimately, the Supreme Court are there to interpret the law, but as legislators, it's our job to create the law that the Supreme Court then rules on. So to have the Labour Party kind of so absent on this conversation, and to have Wes Streeting really pushing the division on this in so many ways, and also the fact he's taken so much money from private healthcare, I think creates lots of questions. Now, when we talk about the Green Party, we often talk about being a broad church. I agree with that. But broad churches have walls. And if your MO is to misgender someone, anyone can do that accidentally. I've certainly done it accidentally. But if you are doing that repeatedly, that is harassment. And my bold leadership requires me to also tell the truth. And harassment is not welcome in the Green Party. Transphobia is not welcome in the Green Party. So people can think what they want. I'm not there to tone or thought police people, but I am there to create a safe space, particularly for the most vulnerable people or the most marginalised people. And that's always my politics. I always think in this room is the most marginalised or vulnerable person represented in this room, because actually that lifts everyone up. If we're always making sure we're designing a society that is the most inclusive and most welcome for a disabled person, a migrant, a trans person, whoever it might be, then ultimately that's a more equal society for everyone. So yes to kind and compassionate conversations, but also yes to being very clear about our values and not needing to be a home to everyone. Other parties are available.
Go for it,
I
Ellie.
just wanted to pick up on this this conversation about picking fights, which I think is perhaps one of the contrasts between our approaches. Because for me, the language of picking fights it's a very polarising language, and that's the sort of thing that really puts people off. I hear it all the time on the doorstep in politics. And it's absolutely possible to be totally clear about what you stand for, to challenge power constantly. For example, I've spoken out on Gaza basically every week since I've been elected. I've been a very, very strong voice in Parliament, constantly holding the government to account. Recently, for example, leading a debate, challenging them on their responsibilities under the Genocide Convention to act to prevent genocide. I don't conceive of that as picking a fight. I think of it as being really powerful in opposition and in standing up for what you believe in. And my whole experience in politics is that the polarization is what really turns people off. And we need to have a politics that's about inclusion. We need to create a politics that's about helping people to feel hopeful that there are people that they can connect with, helping people to feel that they understand what we're talking about, rather than being pushed away by the framing.
So I think this is a privileged position. I think ultimately the people in this country who are really suffering right now need people to fight for us. They need people to fight with them, and they need to know that the Green Party are on their side. Yes to challenging power, But that's picking a fight. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I think the people in this country need us to connect with anger. If we stay in anger, we're just turning into reform. I'm not suggesting that for a second. What we need to do, though, is if we just go straight to hope, that sounds out of touch. And it results in exactly where I started this conversation from. People say, oh, I like the Green Party, but they don't really seem to understand me. You need to connect with the anger, because that's where people are at right now in this country, and then turn it to hope, turn it to solutions. But if you don't connect with the anger, first of all, then you miss people entirely. There's a lot to be angry about right now. And if you're not angry, then people aren't paying attention.
Now, look, we are running out of time because, Ellie, you've got to go to Parliament. So I'm going to ask you one final question. We've heard a lot, though we're still waiting for some of the specifics on this Progressive Party that's going to be formed potentially by Zara Sultana and the former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. And there are obviously concerns that this is going to continue to fragment a progressive vote. And one of the most consistent things we hear from the listenership of this podcast is, why can't progressive political parties work together? How open are you to cooperation with whatever this new progressive political party is, with the Liberal Democrats, with sections of the Labour Party, for example, that are disillusioned with the current leadership? Where do you stand on progressive coalition building?
Looking for the common ground is central to my politics. I've already talked about that. In terms of the New Left Party that was not quite squib-like launched by Zara 2 weeks ago, and nothing seems to have happened since that. I mean, it's not a great start, is it, frankly? Let's wait and see, right? But the reality is that we are always looking to connect and work with other people. So, for example, voting against the proscription of Palestine Action recently, Green MPs were coordinating with and speaking with MPs from Labour who were likewise opposed to that. That frequently happens, voting against the terrible stuff the government has been doing on benefit cuts and all sorts of other issues. The reason I believe in proportional representation, the reason I believe in that sort of politics is because I think it will drive a different style of politics. It will drive all political parties to look for where there's common ground. It will mean that we can have longer term politics where we focus on where the common ground is to tackle the big issues like the housing crisis, the care crisis, the climate crisis, all of these things that require policy making that isn't just about the really narrow and cynical politics we've got at the moment, where the big parties think what's going to appeal to marginal voters in marginal constituencies at the next election, and everything is framed around that. We need a politics in which green values can truly have the power that they do have and the support that they've got in the country. But in order to do that, we need to build that electoral coalition that I was talking about earlier, which means reaching out to people who might previously have thought of themselves as Labour or Lib Dem or Conservative, or even in a few cases, possibly Reform, and show them how voting Green will help them to get much better representation, get the change that they want to see in the country.
Zack, really quickly, should the Green Party cooperate with the New Left Party?
So imagine there's a big green door or a big green tent. Imagine there's a big red carpet rolling towards it, because that's what I want Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana to feel right now. They are undoubtedly aligned with the majority of our politics. Setting up a new party is incredibly difficult, but there's a party that has over 800 councillors. We got nearly 2 million votes in the last election. And the Green Party got 39 second-place finishes, 19 of which are in London. So I think rather than set up a new party, I'd love them to join the Green Party. And so I come back to the initial place where I started. Where have the Green Party gone wrong so far that the likes of Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana aren't going, that's the obvious place for my politics? And I'm really excited we're having
Maybe
an internal...
it's because they're not fully committed to green values.
Well, I think they are, but I think we haven't communicated that our values are aligned. And so what I want to see is a bolder Green Party that says, as Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana undoubtedly do, if you care about the climate crisis, if you care about reducing inequality, if you care about the fact that we had racist riots on our streets last summer, we do not have a moment to waste to be building up new parties or creating new governance structures. We need to join the movement that's going right now. And I think we don't have the time to indulge in these kind of conversations or building alliances. But actually what I'd really like to see is people join the Green Party. If I can't convince them of that, of course I want to work with anyone who ultimately wants to take the fight again, to reform and challenge the Labour government, and I'm totally there for that.
We've run out of time. We both appreciate so much the time you've both taken to speak to us. Thank you so much for joining us on Pod Save the UK. Anyone who is a member of the Green Party of England and Wales prior to voting opening can vote in the election. That means the deadline for new members joining who want to vote is the 31st of July. We've put up a link in the show notes.
Join.
Well, that's, I think, the one thing they can definitely 100%.
Join the Green Party and vote.
Yeah. If you're a Green Party member, ballots open from the 1st of August to the 30th of August, and the leadership results will be announced on the 2nd of September.
And that's it. Thanks for listening to Pod Save the UK. We're taking a week off next week. So, Nish, what should listeners do in the meantime?
We're very happy to recommend other news-based podcasts on this show on weeks we're not available. But the newsagents have done an extraordinary episode about the catastrophic data breach, potentially put the lives of 100,000 Afghans at lethal risk by the Taliban. It's an unbelievable data breach. The story has actually been the subject of a super injunction that has just been lifted this week. Lewis, a former guest of this show, has done a special episode about it, so definitely check that out. Also, on a completely different note, listeners can buy tickets to my Edinburgh Fringe run, which runs from August the 1st to the 10th. If you are going to be in Edinburgh between those dates, please buy tickets from nishkumar.co.uk.
Yeah, and if you like live events, as you should, because Nish's show is excellent, then maybe you'll like last week's episode. We did a live show with Gary Stevenson. It's a spicy one. The fans seem to love it. The listeners have seemed to love it. And so if you've missed it, please do check it out.
Also, don't forget, follow at PodSaveTheUK on Instagram, TikTok and Twitter, and on Blue Sky at podsavetheuk.crooked.com. As always, we want to hear your thoughts. Email us at psuk@reducedlistening.co.uk.
Pod Save the UK is a reduced listening production for Crooked Media.
Thanks to senior producer James Tyndale and producer May Robson, with additional research from Eva Brooks.
Editing is by Nardas Milinic, and our theme music is by Vasilis Fotopoulos.
The executive producers are Anishka Sharma and Katie Long, with additional support from Ari Schwartz.
And remember to hit subscribe for new shows on Thursdays on Amazon, Spotify or Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. See you in 2 weeks, guys.
Have a good fortnight.